Hello, welcome to or back to my channel. I'm going to be analyzed from Young America's Foundation, Abby Roth, live at the National Conservative Student Convention.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing so far? Well, I promise our next speaker does not disappoint. Abby Roth is the creator of Classically Abby, a YouTube channel and lifestyle brand that teaches about classic living and traditional values. She is a classically trained opera singer with a master's degree and professional studies certificate from the Manhattan School of Music. Abby transitioned to YouTube from opera when she realized the importance of sharing how to live a conservative life. With over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, 98,000 followers on Instagram, and 83,000 followers on Twitter, Abby is spreading her message to young women and men everywhere. Please give it up for Abby Roth.
Hello! How's everyone doing? Thank you so much to the team at YAP for organizing this incredible event. Today, I want to talk to you all about the ways I've screwed up. Okay, to be more specific, I want to share with you all the ways I messed up in college. I think a lot of the time, it can seem like the people who are standing up here talking to you had it all figured out from day one. We knew what we believed and why we believed it. We understood all of the things that we talked about, but that is simply not true. What was your impression of what college was supposed to be like? My impression from media and pop culture was that college was basically a nonstop alcohol and drug-induced party that would forever be remembered as the best years of my life. Of course, there were classes, and there was learning and studying and libraries and all of that. But if you really only focused on your studies, you are missing out on what college was really all about. I'm sure some, if not all of you, understand that feeling. That you're supposed to be doing college in this specific way. That you're supposed to be going out there, experimenting. I grew up knowing that wasn't going to be my college experience because I was raised religiously. So I wasn't going to treat college like a 4-year hedonistic spree. That wasn't going to happen for me. That wasn't something I was looking for. But there was still that feeling that if I didn't take advantage of my time in college, I was missing out on the full experience. You can know what's good and right, but if you're immersed and surrounded in leftist ideology, which we all are,
Okay, well, let me just point this out. I was raised very liberal, very Democrat, and when I entered college, I too knew that partying and binges and all of that wasn't going to be my experience either. Why? Because, yeah, liberals can have faith too. And two, I knew that I was there to get a career that was going to support me, so I didn't have to depend on a man or anyone else to live. Continue.
We'll often question what's good and right, especially in these formative years where you're still determining what your worldview is, where you're still figuring things out. And what people tell you in the vast majority of things that you're consuming is one way when your traditional values are telling you something different. I ended up making plenty of mistakes, and I learned from them. I hope that by sharing some of my own, you all can keep me in mind when you're close to making mistakes yourselves. Of course, you'll all make mistakes. I'm sure you've already made many, but I made enough bad decisions that I hope you don't have to make quite as many. So how can you actually make the most of your time at college? How can you go, feel proud of what you accomplished, and leave better than when you started? Well, you can leave college with foggy memories of parties and hookups come and gone. Or you can leave college with friendships that will last a lifetime. Maybe a soulmate, a strong understanding of your faith and values, and a degree that's actually worth something. You can take your first steps into adulthood and set your feet in the direction of your future. So let me share 5 lessons with you and how I learned them the hard way. Okay, number 1, practice your leftist BS comprehension.
What exactly is BS about leftists, anything? I was raised leftist, and I also have values, and I also didn't treat college like every day was supposed to be a random hookup or whatever else. So, yeah.
When I was in my first year of college, one of my requirements was to take a writing class. Our professor started the class by showing us that everything around us had bias. So he drew a graph. On one side, he put the right, and he wrote Fox. Okay, fair enough. On the left, he put MSNBC. Also fair enough. Probably could have put CNN, but he put MSNBC. In the middle, what do you think he put as not having a bias? Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart was what he put as not having a bias because comedy was never political. Now, if any of you have watched anything comedic in the last 10 years, you'll know that comedy is either so political it's not funny, or so politically correct it's not funny. Now, if you know anything about Jon Stewart, you'll know that he is anything but moderate or middle of the road. And even though he presented many things as fact, his goal was really to make conservatives look stupid. I also had to take a social course. This one was called Changing Family Forms. You can imagine what that class was like, and you'd be right. The professor shared a list of fascist dictators and communist leaders and asked us what they had in common. Was it that they were tyrannical murderers who killed millions of people? No, of course not. The answer was that they all came from stable 2-parent households. And apparently that proved that coming from a traditional background doesn't at all guarantee positive outcomes. Now, I caught the leftism in these classes because I was looking for it and it was kind of obvious it would be there. But I was also an opera student. None of my music classes were particularly political, and so I didn't even notice the inherent leftist bias that was being presented to me by my professors. If your professors have a bias, even if they're not talking about something political, they'll kind of let it seep in and ooze in as they talk about what they're interested in. So I didn't question it. And therein lies mistake number 1. I didn't practice my leftist BS comprehension, like reading comprehension. Everything you watch, everything you read, everything you listen to, and every class you take is trying to convince you of something. It's your responsibility to learn how to recognize it. Get good at hearing the bias in everything presented to you, whether it be on your own side or someone else's. A good example is the new Barbie movie. Conservative.
Yeah, when I first started college, I had a conservative professor that made it pretty clear that she was conservative. And everything she taught, of course, it was a government class, so yeah, was, Republicans and me, conservatives are right, and everyone else is wrong. Yeah, let that seep in, Abby.
Wanted to believe, there was a good number of conservatives who wanted to believe that this movie was going to be a return to real femininity and embracing beauty, right? We saw girls in pretty pink dresses. Isn't that what femininity is all about? But that movie, which I didn't want to see, but I did for you, it had the most obvious woke agenda I've seen in a long time. It wasn't only unwatchable from a quality perspective, it was a feminist diatribe hating and deriding men. Now, If you know who Greta Gerwig is, the director, and if you knew it's, Hollywood generally, which is a woke pit, you could have imagined that this movie was not going to be a conservative's dream. But if you're a young person who sees girls in pretty dresses and thinks, I'm just going to see a movie, you might not be prepared for the bias being thrown your way. In 2020, 98% of Cornell's employee and professor donations went to Democrat candidates and left-leaning political action committees. 98%. That's just an example of what you're dealing with on college campuses. Leftist thought and ideology dominates classrooms. I'm sure you've all experienced it. You will constantly be bombarded with the other side's positions as if they are fact. It will be stated as if it's obvious, and no one could disagree. It's up to you to realize it, think about it.
Yeah. In my first year of college, I had a conservative professor who actually told students that they were wrong, basically stupid, for not believing what she did. And you can guess what that was. Now, tell me again how it's only leftist professors that are bias, Abby. Tell me again.
And know what your response is. Honing this craft in college will prepare you for the real world, where you will be facing this all the time. Number 2, loneliness leads to bad decisions. During my time at college, I was studying vocal performance. I was an opera singer. I was afraid to become a member of YAF or the college Republicans because I knew if my colleagues found out, I'd be blacklisted. Everyone there thinks the same thing. Everyone in the arts generally, but in opera as well, thinks the same thing. And so if you think something different, if you are on the right, you will not get a job. So I didn't want anyone to find out. My class was so small, 9 people overall. Okay, imagine that. In a college of thousands of people, my class, the people I took all of my classes with, 9 people. That I didn't have a ton of people to share my views with. In order not to be lonely, I grew very close with the circle of friends in my program. We did share a common interest, music, but we didn't have shared values. To stave off the loneliness, I began making bad decisions. I'd go to parties I shouldn't have. I stayed out late with people when I knew I'd regret it the next day. I even developed a crush on someone I should never be with. I'll talk about that more later. And I made bad decisions rather than being lonely. So that was mistake number 2, letting myself be lonely. Loneliness is the number 1 indicator of bad decision making. People will do anything to avoid loneliness because it's an unnatural human state. People were not meant to be alone. We were meant to be in families and communities and relationships. We will change everything about ourselves if it means we will have friends to hang out with. We will change our values, our opinions, our faith, and everything that matters to us. Don't let it get to that point. Make friends with people who do share your values, who do share your faith, who can bolster you and who you are. Because the truth is, you'll actually get lonelier and lonelier the more you lose yourself to fit in. And then when you are by yourself, you won't recognize who you are anymore. You aren't the core of who you are at all. You've covered it with all of the lies of the people you've changed yourself to fit in to be with. Instead of compromising your values to make friends who share your values, and you'll have friendships that last a lifetime. That's what's great about these kinds of conferences. You can meet people who share your values. Loneliness is such a pervasive problem that it leads me right into my next 2 pieces of advice. Number 3, don't let yourself stay quiet about things that matter. Speak out, be confident, be bold, and embrace the repercussions. I didn't speak up in college for a few reasons. 1, I wasn't confident in what I had to say. And to be honest, maybe I shouldn't have been because I didn't take the time to research my positions. I kind of grew up in a household that believed certain things, and I took that as true, and never really did my own research into it. So I didn't feel confident that I could defend it if somebody came up against that. 2, I was afraid of hurting my chances in the opera industry. But there's one story that sticks in my head every time I think about it. When I was at the Manhattan School of Music getting my master's degree, I was waiting backstage in rehearsal. In the green room, which is kind of the room where people hang out, but you can't hear them backstage, a few of my colleagues were sitting on the floor discussing abortion. Now, being pro-life was something I was always really interested in, so I was actually well educated on the topic. I've always been very passionate about being pro-life, about pregnancy, about how that kind of thing happens, that miracle of life. And so I always knew a lot about that topic. And so when I saw my friends talking about abortion, being very ill-informed, saying things that really had no basis in fact, and also were emotionally driven arguments, but in the wrong direction, I didn't say anything. I didn't speak up at all. I didn't have to be combative. I didn't have to come in and be like, you're wrong, here's why. But I could have easily just asked some questions. This is something I learned from my husband, that sometimes a very good way to change someone's mind is not to actually fight with them, but to ask questions that get them to think about it. Oh, are you really sure that that's how life begins? Like, when does life begin? And is that important to you? You know, that kind of thing. That was mistake number 3. I stayed quiet when I could have spoken out, when I could have changed someone's mind. Obviously, as I've gotten older, I've read more, I've informed myself, and I've made a career out of saying the truth. I've got a ton of haters. The number of awful comments I get is too many to count. Feel free to check out any of my YouTube videos and you'll see. People often ask me if I care about it. How do I handle all the hate that I get, all the trolls? And the truth is I don't care. Why? Because I'm speaking the truth. And when you're speaking the truth...
Side note, I actually ended up finding this conservative professor's boss writing a letter and saying basically, you know what, this lady's here to teach about government, teach the facts, not to sway me to be conservative, which she wouldn't have done anyway. Yeah, she was a very elitist, she wanted to make sure that you knew she lived in this, affluent neighborhood and basically knew everything. Now, me, the little liberal on the side, went to her boss and said, basically, this lady has a job and she's not doing it. And I'm sick of it. You know what? You are not going to sway me. Don't even try. Stick to teaching what you're meant to teach. And she didn't like this. And I wasn't the only one. So, there's that.
Whatever anyone says that's the opposite is wrong. Whatever someone says in the comments that's mean is just wrong. An influencer friend of mine recently ran into some controversy and called me asking what to do about it. People were sending her hate comments, were sending her hate in her DMs. There were 2 things I had to say to her. 1, if you're going to take strong positions, ones that you know are right, you have to be okay with the repercussions. You have to be confident and you have to be strong. And that's great. It means you're doing something right if people are trying to fight with you in the comments. And fighting is, if you're going to be in a fight, it means there's someone on the other side. Number 2, you don't always have to respond to things. I've made a career out of not responding to people. You don't have to apologize and you don't have to explain yourself. You do not have to apologize. That's a big one. You can simply say the truth and take responsibility for having said it by not discussing it further. Done. I said what I said. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've done this too. I basically told this professor, look, I know what you're doing. It's not going to work. I'm not going to change my position. Neither are many people in the class that hold similar views. Don't even try. I'm sick of it. Do your job. Done.
Much for your input. Educate yourselves. Learn more about what you think and why you think it. Then, speak out. The truth is, you should choose a career where you can say what you think. I'm not saying you need to choose a career where you literally, as your job, say what you think, but I'm saying you need to choose a career where if you talk about your views, you're not going to get fired. If people are talking about politics in the workplace, it can't be one-sided. You don't want to build your life on sand, where all of a sudden you're constantly trying to keep silent about your views, so no one finds out that you're actually a conservative, and then someone does and everything comes crashing down. You should live in a community of people that allow you to speak your thoughts openly, if not actually support.
Side note, one time I was at work in college and this lady handed me a pamphlet from PragerU, which is a conservative university. Well, not university, but a site. And as a liberal, I was not really interested in this. But, instead of starting an argument, I waited till she left and just threw it in the garbage. Just threw it in the garbage. Done.
Those values themselves. It's our responsibility to speak the truth. And if you're in a career trajectory that doesn't allow that, you will find yourself less and less happy there, even if you love what you do. Why? Well, it connects back to loneliness. You'll be alone. You'll be silent. You'll be silenced. Speaking out allows you to make real friends. The friends you make in college that last are the friends that you can call 10 years down the road when your lifestyle reflects your traditional values. The friends I made in college, I talked to basically none of them. Why? Because as soon as our shared interest, music, wasn't the primary part of my life, our values were too different. We didn't mesh anymore. We didn't make sense. Music will always be a love of mine, but it would never have been enough to fill my life with meaning. Now, I live every day grateful for the purpose I find in the things that really matter. But the friends I made in college would not agree with where I'm at. And it means that we can't really stay close. Saying the truth is more important now than ever. We are in a culture war. And if we want our children to live in a world without drag queen story hour at the library, we have to voice our concerns. It's up to us and it's up to you. Use your time in college to speak out, learn more, and build friendships on strong foundations. Number 4, don't let your faith get weaker during college. Instead, let it grow and become stronger. When I was at the University of Southern California, there wasn't a huge Orthodox Jewish community. But the truth is, I really didn't seek it out. I didn't even head to the closest other college, UCLA, which did have a big Jewish community. I just treated my faith as something I could practice on my own. And I didn't seek out others who shared it. Faith is not purely personal. It's also communal. You can't depend on your personal relationship to God to carry you through the hard times when you're in college and you're getting attracted to so many things from so many different people with so many different worldviews. You need a community to support you. As a result, my faith began to waver. Opera took precedence. My singing career became more important than my relationship to God and my practice of Judaism. And that was my 4th mistake. I took my faith for granted. It is so easy to put other things above your religion when you're busy with everything else. when you've made friends with people who don't believe in God and who spend their time doing everything except prayer and worship. But a college is not the place to let your faith weaken. It's the place to strengthen your faith. Find a church, find a synagogue, find a community of people who bolster your faith. If you surround yourself with people who also share your religion, you will naturally find yourself investing more in your relationship with God. And if you don't, that
I actually did meet somebody that shared the same faith, and it eventually led to me finding this book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Jesus Rode a Donkey. And that book basically affirmed what I always knew. And, I'm not saying this of all conservatives, but, some of the things they tend to stand for is a preference, and this is my opinion, toward the wealthy, trickle-down economics, that kind of thing. When I was taught that we need to that the love of money is basically the root of all evil, and that we should care for those that have less, and that we need to care about them before the rich.
loneliness will pop its head in and lead you toward whatever the closest group of peers are doing, which may have nothing to do with faith at all. You will do what you need to have friends. And if that means putting your faith, your relationship to God on the back burner, you will.
Actually, no, not always. I never would stay with a group of friends that didn't share my values. Not once. And if they didn't want to be my friend, oh well.
Start a Bible study group. Treat college as an amazing place to learn more about your faith with people who you've never met before. It's really interesting to talk to people from different walks of life and get their perspectives on God, on religion. Instead of treating college as a hedonistic opportunity to act in ways you'll regret, use this as the time to prepare yourself for how you'd like to approach your faith in the future. I know that my relationship with God was tenuous at best in college, and that didn't make me happier, despite the fact that it looked on paper like I had more freedom. Everything will tell you nowadays that religion is oppressive, and that without religion, you can go out and do whatever you want. And isn't that what real freedom is? Freedom outside of God is worship of everything else. Alcohol, partying, money, sex, even studying if it comes at the cost of going to prayer services every Sunday. It's worship of desire, which is never freedom. So allow yourself to develop and grow your relationship to God, deepen it and nourish it, along with others who support and believe in the same things you do. Number 5, date seriously and with purpose. At USC, in order to stave off loneliness, I began making good friends with people who didn't share my values, as I mentioned, and that meant I developed a big crush on a guy who was not right for me. We had a lot of chemistry, but in every other way, we didn't make sense. I wanted to marry a Jew because I wanted to raise my children with my faith. He wasn't Jewish. He would get high and not go to class. Like, it was stuff that would never have made us compatible. And he developed a crush on me, too, which was even more cruel because I knew that I couldn't be with him, but he had no such reason not to fall head over heels. I got emotionally involved with someone who was wrong for me in every way, and I hurt him in the process. And that's the last mistake I'll share today. Don't get sucked into the modern culture of dating whoever you have chemistry with. Date seriously and with purpose. Know what dating is for. Dating for fun is a misnomer. It's not fun at all. In fact, it's quite upsetting to spend a lot of time with someone whose company you enjoy, who you have chemistry with, maybe you even hook up with, and then to go through the inevitable breakup that breaks your heart. Doesn't sound fun. It's a waste of time and a waste of energy. Dating seriously is great because it leads you to the right person faster. Then, when you're with the person you'll end up with, dating is fantastic because you are just hanging out with someone you like all the time. And you have a future, so you're not constantly on tenterhooks. College is the perfect time to date for marriage. This is the time to find someone you can build a life with because there are so many people for you to meet. Everyone is single, everyone is looking. Everyone is lonely, which is a good thing in that sense. It's much harder once you're out of college, to be honest. And yes, even this connects back to loneliness. I have a friend who has dated multiple women who were wrong for him. He often will date women who he knows he can't have a future with. We talked about it, and it became clear that he was evading loneliness himself by dating women so that he had someone to spend his time with. He was filling up the time between serious girlfriends, theoretically, by just dating to date, which really meant he never had a serious girlfriend because he didn't have time to find the right person. He was stretching out the time in which he would actually be lonely because he would never find the right person if he was wasting his time with any person. So how do you find that person? Well, you use my patented classically Abby theory of chemistry and compatibility. That's how you do it. You guys have all heard of chemistry and compatibility.
Okay, sorry about that. I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing, but I'll end with this. Abby seems to think that only conservatives can have values, religion. That's just not true. And she also seems to think, based on her other videos, that liberals, leftists, whatever, hook up with anybody because it's fun. For the record, I didn't. If you were not the person that I was going to spend the rest of my life with, then, yeah, you didn't need sex from me. And if you didn't want to understand that, hit the road. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave a comment in the comment section below.